talk about Star Trek Beyond, alright? So does Star Trek Beyond actually manage to be a 50 plus year tribute to Star Trek? Yes, and I think it actually manages to pull it off in a pretty good way just in general. I think some of the best things of Star Trek Beyond tends to be the references and the callbacks to the original series, and it also manages to feel like an old school episode with adding a new blend of elements from the reboot series just in general. Now granted, even though it had a lot of callbacks or references to the original show, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't necessarily rely too much on that to the point where it allows the movies to stand on its own, and I really did enjoy seeing that. Now, granted, even though Justin Lin is a pretty good director when it comes to these Fast and Furious movies, sometimes I do feel like his style of, Fast and Furious style action doesn't necessarily mesh that well with Star Trek, because I feel like it felt more like the action was coming before the story, and sometimes that made it kind of suffer a little bit. Now, granted, even though the story is okay for the most part, and it does feel very simple and a little bit too familiar, I feel like the journey enough through this story is actually entertaining to the point where I actually really didn't complain about it. One of the biggest problems I feel like with Star Trek, this one personally, is the fact that the villain is quite weak. Now, even though I would watch Idris Elba fucking read the telephone book on the toilet, I don't think he was really that great in here. And maybe it's not necessarily his performance. He gave good performance, but I feel like the writing just wasn't there to really make you care about his villain just in general. Now, what I did care about personally just in general was the characters of the Enterprise, the crew. Because I feel like seeing all these people kind of like stranded together, you get to see all these relationships separately kind of fleshed out, from Bones and Spock to Uhura and Sulu, from Kirk or whatever you may want to call it. Oh, I feel like the best moments in Star Trek are actually more of the interacting moments and some of the smaller moments that really make you kind of care for some of these characters. Because if you don't care about these characters, you're just not going to give a shit about the movie. So I think those were actually some of the more better moments, some of the emotional stuffs. It may hit you in a couple of cases. Unfortunately, I feel like there is a lot of characters in here to the point where some people may or may not get the short end of the stick. One of them being Anton Yelchin, rest in peace, but I feel like he just doesn't really do much in this movie, and he kind of never really did much. But he does give a good performance. Chris Pine does a knockout job with Kirk. He gets better and better and better. That's awesome. One of the standouts tends to be Sophia Patella. She's awesome. She's badass. She's got good chemistry with, Montgomery, Scotty or Scott, whatever you want to call it. But I think those are all fun to see. I think set piece and the action scenes are fantastic. They stepped it up. But unfortunately, I feel like that's all you have sometimes. I feel like the story is the weakest part by far of this entire entry. But overall, I feel like it's the most Star Trek-ish of the show, of the series just in general from this trilogy. What I did like personally just in general was the theme of togetherness, which I feel like is the main theme that's kind of like going into this film. It's pulling together and kind of like coming through adversity and kind of like pushing forward. It's a big theme that's kind of going around in the world today, and definitely something we can kind of look towards. And I feel like that's actually kind of what Gene Roddenberry wanted us to kind of come together, which is kind of the main theme of Star Trek, at least from my perspective, just in general. But overall, Star Trek Beyond is actually a very fun, fast-paced, energetic film that sometimes gets a little bit boring and feels a little bit too familiar to the point where you feel like there's not that much new ground being broken here. But overall, the cast bring their A game. The character development is awesome. And the emotional moments are actually quite good. Unfortunately, as I said before, it's a story that kind of lacks a little bit. And just in general, the villain, which kind of feels like he's just sometimes there, which is just the case for all these Star Trek villains. But that's my thought. It's a pretty good movie. It's entertaining, and it's definitely a welcome breath of fresh air in a very dry summer season. So you can see it, you cannot see it, you can do what you want, but that's my thought. Comment, subscribe, and like. I'm Chris Smith, and I'm signing out.